Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very great morning, everyone. Inshallah, today we are going to look at our next lecture, and it is entitled Phonetics, the Sound of Language. It reminds me of a movie entitled The Sound of Music. This is uh, an archaic movie. I'm not sure whether you've heard of it before. Sound of Music, something like that. Okay, since I'm using this new software called OBS, it's not new, it's just I'm new to it. So since I'm using OBS, inshallah, the lecture is a bit lengthy in comparison to the previous lectures. So I hope you can have your drink with you, something to munch. Prepare your pen and papers as well, as while you're listening, I hope you're able to jot down and scribble and draw mind maps wherever necessary. Yeah? So inshallah, today we are going to look at phonetics, which is the sound of language. These are the outlines of the lecture. Inshallah, we are going to look at the first one, the definition of phonetics. We will get to know what phonetic is about, and then the basic terms just to familiarize ourselves. And inshallah, after that, we are going to continue with the organs involved in phonetics. I'm sure while we were in secondary school, we have learned about the organs in human body. But today we are going to look at the organs that are involved in sound production. Okay, so in human being, there are several organs that play major role in producing sound. Moving on, we will also look at speech production. What do we know about speech production? We try to describe sounds as how we produce it. Interesting, isn't it? It has never occurred to us that we can actually describe sound. Ah, interesting. We want to know the difference, excuse me, the difference between consonant and vowel. I'm sure you all know what is consonant, what is vowel, yes? But before we go on, before we go on, I want you to unlearn what you've known about vowels and consonant, and I want you to relearn your vowels and consonant in this lecture today. Now that's humongous, isn't it? I want you to unlearn your vowels and consonants, and I want you to relearn your vowels and consonants. Last but not least, we are going to look at IPA. IPA stands for International Phonetic Alphabet. Now, we have known our ABCs, and of course, some of us we know our Jawi as well. Maybe some of you have learned foreign languages. You know characters of Hangul. I do not know. That is the only language I know because I don't study other languages. Not yet, perhaps. Yeah. So you know characters in a language. But what about IPA? It's not characters of a language per se. What is it? We will look at it later on. Yeah? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Right, first and foremost, let's look at the definition. Now look at the picture down there underneath 01, the definition. Yeah, you can see F and then E, but it is inverted E. You see N, and then you see inverted number 3, T, I without the title, K, and S. These are the IPA for the word phonetics. Okay, the letter F stands for F. The inverted E, we call it schwa, stands for the sound and then the letter N, and then the inverted number 3, it carries the sound the letter T, and then I without the title, E, the letter K, and the letter S combined together, you will have the sound phonetics. Welcome to my life. Welcome to my life. You are going to do phonetics today. This is the the perk of being a linguist. Okay, now let us look at just a little bit about this thing. What is it about? First and foremost, from Peter Latchford, A Course in Phonetics in 1982. You were not even born. I was not even born yet. Okay, so phonetics is concerned with describing the speech sounds that occur in the languages of the world. We want to know what these sounds are, how they fall into patterns, and how they change in different circumstances. The first job of a phonetician is to try to find out what people are doing when they're talking and when they're listening to speech. So the study of phonetic is concerned with describing speech sounds. We want to be able to describe speech sounds as how people are using it in order to communicate. And of course, since we communicate in different languages in the world, so phonetics try to describe speech sounds of languages in the world. We want to know what these sounds are. Who is we? We would be the phonetician, the people who study phonetics. So the phoneticians, they want to know what is that sound. When we say what is that sound, we are referring to the characteristic of this sound. We want to be able to describe this sound, the characteristic of this sound, the attributes of the sound. You see, when we're referring to our friend, oh, this is my friend Amirul, he is from Johor, and then he likes to play sport, we are describing Amirul. When we're describing Elle, this is my friend Alina Sofia, she lives in Selangor, she loves to travel with her family. We are describing people. When we're talking about sound, we want to be able to describe the characteristic of the sound so that we can differentiate. This is Amirul, this is Elena Sofia, this is Julia, this is Fiwas, this is a consonant, this is vowel, etc., etc. You see, when we have these attributes, then we'll be able to differentiate, characterize, and identify them. Then we want to know how the sounds fall into patterns, what sort of patterns there are in describing sound, and how they change in different circumstances. Apparently, sound can change. Habis you ingat only human can change? Cheh, dream on, brothers and sisters. Sound can change as well. Yeah? So we want to know how this occur. So the first job of phonetician is to try to find out what people are doing when they are talking. Wow, humongous, isn't it? Am I making things complicated already? And then what happened when people are listening? Communication is about speaking and listening. That's why Allah gave us 2 ears. We have to listen first and then one mouth. After listening only can we talk. Hebat kan ciptaan Allah? Masya Allah. Maka, this is about the study of phonetics. That is all for my lecture today. Tak adalah. My mind just hyper dah morning. Okay? Now, phonetic is the study of speech sounds, to put it in words. Alright? So when we're dealing with phonetics, actually, we are looking at the study of speech sounds. It deals with how sounds are articulated and how sounds are perceived. So the study of phonetics is divided, without further ado, I'm going to move to the next point. Phonetics is divided into 3 points, which is the first one is production of speech sound. Second, the transmission of speech sound. And third is the perception of speech sound. Apparently, when we're talking to our friends, to our family, when we're talking over the phone, it involves these 3 processes. The first one is the production. In order for you to speak, you have to produce the sound. Kan? Macam Ahmad ni cakap, so you have to produce the sound. Second is the transmission of the sound. The sound is carried by wave in the air. And lastly is the perception, how you hear the sound. Maka in phonetics, production is called articulatory. So it makes up articulatory phonetics, which is the production of speech sound. And Articulatory phonetics involve oral and nasal cavity. Do you know what is oral and nasal? Oral. Pernah dengar the toothbrush Oral-B? Oral involves our mouth. Nasal involves our nose. So apparently when we are producing sound, we are using our mouth and our nose. Tetapi, it is not restricted to only mouth and nose. Other parts there are other parts in our oral and nasal cavity. That is why we call oral cavity and nasal cavity. Sebab bukan hanya mouth and nose sahaja involved in producing sound. Okay, moving on. Acoustic phonetic is when we're dealing with the medium for communication. We need air to communicate. Maka, since we are living on Earth, there is air for us to breathe. And the air carries sound wave. Bagaimana the air carries sound wave? That is being studied by acoustic phonetic. Okay. Kalau dekat bulan, what's going to happen? You cannot speak. Number one, because there's no air, you cannot breathe. Kan? And since there's no air, the sound wave is not being carried by any medium. That is why you cannot hear sound by right lah on the moon. Yang ketiga adalah auditive phonetics. It deals with the perception by the ear. When people are talking and then the sound wave is being carried by the air, it reaches and it is being captured by our ear. Hebat kan ciptaan Allah. That is why our earlobe is that shaped so that it can capture sounds in the air. And then from the ear, it goes up to the brain and being processed by our brain. And all the synapse in our brain is trying to figure out what sound do we hear? What sound do we hear? What is the meaning of this sound? And these process, it occurs very, very quickly. Menunjukkan betapa hebatnya Allah cipta manusia. Semuanya cepat, tak ada delay pun when you're listening to sound kan. Orang cakap, woi, dia termanggu 2-3 minit. Baru jawab, tak ada macam tu kan. Macam kalau sloth kan, sloth punya action kan slow kan dalam cerita apa, Zootopia tu. Orang dah cakap jokes and then dia, that is so funny. Dan dia pandang kawan dia, hey, do you want to listen to a joke? Delay. Tidak. Allah tidak ciptakan manusia begitu. Okay. When you hear sound, it directly goes up to your brain. And this process occurs very, very quickly, in which we can almost instantly assume what sound that is. Kan? Contohnya when you hear someone scream, ah! So automatically it crosses your mind. Satu, lipas. Yang kedua, dia terkejut, nampak hantu benda. Yang ketiga, phone dia jatuh. So which among these three options yang you rasa is the reason why someone scream? Jawapan dia, phone jatuh. Kita paling takut kalau phone kita jatuh kan. It even feel hurt. Maka that is how you study phonetics. You study articulatory phonetics, you study acoustic phonetics, and you study auditive phonetics. Okay, moving on. We have this question. How sounds are produced? We want to know. We are curious how sounds are produced. Maka, most sounds are produced by one, air stream, coming from the two, our lungs. Number three, passing through, one or more. Number four, speech organs. Maka when you are producing sound, these four items should be there. That should be there. Number one, airstream. Number two, from the lungs. Number three, passing through. Number four, speech organs. So when you are describing, when people ask you, macam mana sound is produced in human? Jawapannya. Number one, airstream from the lungs, passing through one or more speech organs. Itu skema jawapannya. Now, where and how the air stream is obstructed determine the identity of the sound produced. Where we obstruct, kita halang, where we obstruct the airstream and how we obstruct the airstream will determine the identity of the sound produced. Ingat tak tadi saya sebut we want to be able to describe sound. We want to be able to know the characteristic of sound. Maka inilah kerjanya. We look at where and how the airstream is obstructed. Kalau we have known where and how the air stream obstructed, what kind of sound is produced? Apparently, we are producing consonant sound. Menarik kan? And then, when the shape of the vocal tract changes, bukannya shape of your heart, tetapi shape of vocal tract changes, different sounds are produced. Apa akan jadi? What would happen if you change the shape of your vocal tract? Then vowel sounds are produced. Subhanallah, menarik kan? If you obstruct where and how, you will produce consonant sound. Tetapi if you change shape of vocal tract, you will be able to produce vowel sound. Menarik, isn't it? In a diagram, we will look at speech production mechanism such as this. The first one, let's start with the lungs, in which in human being, lungs is the energy source. Now, kalau you pernah tengok apa those reality TV shows, sometimes you have people singing in the show. I do not know, man. You have to help me out. I do not have TV at home. Honestly, I don't have TV at home. Jadi, hold on. Mentor milenial. Ada lagi ke cerita tu? Okay, mentor milenial ke Gegar Berganza ke apa lagi ya? Academy Fantasia ke One in a Million kan, you name it. Yeah, you name it. All these reality TV shows when they have people singing, and sometimes the vocal teacher they would say dekat kalau kat Malaysia lah dia akan cakap keluarkan suara perut, keluarkan suara perut. It is so much interesting because the only noise coming from your tummy would be the rumbling sound of your hunger. Something like that. Yeah. That is the only noise produced by your stomach. If you want to talk about producing sound, it is actually from your lungs because that is the energy source of your sound. Kenapa? Kerana every time we inhale, every time we take a deep breath, the air would go to our lungs. Okay. Kemudian, when the air goes to our lungs, the diaphragm will actually pose some pressure on it. Maka the air from the lungs will go up to the larynx. Will go up to the larynx. When the air goes up to the larynx, kalau dalam istilah biology, larynx ni kita kenali dia sebagai trachea, windpipe, lagi ya, leher, larynx. Kan? Jadi, from the lungs, it goes up to the larynx, and then the air would be released using our vocal tract. Vocal tract ni, it can be our nasal cavity. Ingat tak nasal cavity, oral cavity, ataupun our pharynx. Allah Ta'ala, what is pharynx? Chillax. Sekejap lagi saya introduce what is pharynx. Okay, now, our lungs is the energy source. Our larynx, our trachea, our windpipe ni, dekat situ dia ada glottis, also known as vocal cords, also known as vocal folds, also known as Adam's apple. Dr. Faiz pernah tanya saya tau, kenapa apple? Oh my god, I have no answer to that. I have no answer to that. It is called Adam's apple. Halqum. Yeah, our halqum. Why is it called Adam's apple? Kenapa tak panggil Adams grapes ke, Adams mangga ke, Adams whatever lah. Why apple? Don't ask me such question. I don't know. Okay. Maka from our energy source, it goes up to our vocal folds, and then it will be released using nasal cavity ataupun oral cavity. Sebab dekat pharynx tu dia dah alter dah. Okay, pharynx ini yang akan alter whether the sound goes to our oral cavity atau our nasal cavity. Dekat vocal folds ini terjadinya voicing. Apa pula maksud voicing? Allahu Rabbi. Chillax, jangan panik. Saya akan terangkan satu persatu. And dekat nasal cavity dengan oral cavity, we are going to look at the shape of the sound. We are going to look at speech articulation in which the sound is being categorized using this mechanism. The first one is the status of the glottis. Glottis or the vocal folds. You can Google, you can Google and then you can see the picture of vocal cords. Gitu. Kalau I want to include everything, boleh. Tetapi yang ini pun already panjang. Right? Now, voicing is the sound that is produced when the vocal cords are vibrating. Now, I want you to have your index finger, jari telunjuk, and then put it on your halqum. Carilah halqum ada ke tidak. And then I want you to produce, buat sekarang, everyone. Stop what you're doing. Follow me. Ambil your finger, put it on your Adam's apple, and say the sound. Ada rasa vibration tak? Do you feel the vibration? Can. Now, try producing sound. Tak ada vibration kan? Buat ke tak ni? Pukul kan semua orang. Buat cepat. Put your index finger on your Adam's apple and say, there's no vibration, isn't it? When there is vibration, it is called voiced sound. When there is no vibration, it is called voiceless sound. Menarik kan? Itu cara pertama for us to characterize sound. Yang kedua, place of articulation, in which we are referring to the position of the articulators where the sound is obstructed. Where the airflow is obstructed. Kadang-kadang we obstruct, kita halang the airflow dekat our lips. Tutup mulut semua orang. Kan, combine your upper lip and lower lip and then try produce sound. Kan. That is the b sound. Banyaklah kau. Badada. Badala pula. Baki. Boleh? You are obstructing the airflow dekat your lips. Maka jadilah the b sound. Menarik kan? Okay, yang tu kita tengok kejap lagi. Ada explanation, jangan risau. Yang ketiga adalah the manner of articulation, in which closure made by the articulators and the degree of obstruction of airstream. Maksudnya, we are looking at how the articulation is produced by obstructing airflow. How airflow is obstructed in order for you to produce sound. Tiga. The first one is our Adam's apple. If it vibrates, then it is the voice sound. If it does not vibrate, it is the voiceless sound. Yang kedua is the place of articulation where you obstruct the airflow. Yang ketiga is manner of articulation, how you obstruct the airflow. Moving on. There are other terms in phonetics that I want you to know. The first one is phonology, which is the sound patterns and their meaning. Morphology, we are looking at the structure of words. Kemudian there is syntax, in which you're studying sentence structure. Semantic, when you're studying meaning of words and sentences. Pragmatics refer to the way people use language in context, meaning how they are communicating in real life situation. And also a bonus, which is phonotactics, in which they are referring to the sound combinations in a particular language, in which they want to know which sound combinations are allowed and which sound combinations are not allowed in a particular language. So there are constraints in phonotactics in which basically phonotactics they refer to how spelling convention is allowed or disallowed in a language. Ini just to enrich your knowledge. Now, looking at, we have a question. No, we have two questions. How can we describe sounds in terms of how they are produced in the vocal tract? Sebab we cannot see sound. So we want to know, how can we describe sound? Nanti awak tanya pula, kenapa lah nak buat kerja susah? Why do we want to describe sound? Kerana, sayang sekalian, kerana when there are foreigners studying a foreign language, kan, they want to know how sounds are produced. Sebab saya bagi contoh, when you're speaking Malaysian English, like what I'm doing right now, in comparison to you're speaking British English, in which it sounds so highly prestiged, you see. So when people are talking using British English, it sounds with high prestige and it sounds highly intelligent. So you want to sound intelligent as well in comparison to using whatever language you are using right now. You see, there is no problem using Malaysian English, but there is a problem when you are using colloquial English. You're using slang, kan? Nah, there's a problem to it. Maka we want to be able to describe speech sound so that people will be able to speak like the native speaker. And also, you've heard about accent and dialect. So we want to be able to differentiate and understand the differences. Why such word is pronounced that way in, say, for example, in Australia, and why such word is pronounced the other way in London, for example. Why eight refers to an egg, and why eight refers to the number 8 in Australia. So we want to be able to describe these differences. Hence, we study phonetics. Moving on, we have the question, how can we transcribe this sound? So when we are transcribing, transcribe meaning writing. How do you want to write this sound? So whenever we are writing the sound so that other people can read the sound, there is the goal in which we want to be able to produce a systematic method of how to describe and transcribe sounds occurring in human language. Ceritanya adalah when we are describing, for example, we are teaching our friend to speak bahasa Melayu. Kan macam kisah Mariam dengan Rizal kan? So Rizal wants to teach Mariam how to speak bahasa Melayu, and then he wants to teach her how to speak Kelantanese language as well. So you should be able to transcribe and describe the sound. Yeah. So that is why we study phonetics. It goes back to the question why you are studying this course. I hope by now you have already asked the questions, why am I studying this subject? Why am I studying this topic? When you're constantly asking these questions, kan, it helps you to learn. Yeah. Now, we're looking at especially articulatory phonetics, right? So we want to know how sounds are produced. So all the sounds that we make as we speak are the results of muscle contracting. So apparently when we're talking, it is actually the result of muscles contracting. So the muscles in the chest that we use for breathing produce the flow of air. Ingat lagi tak dekat mana the energy source for speaking? Energy source kat mana? Our lungs. Okay. Jadi the diaphragma kalau dalam biologi kan, dalam sains kan. So the diaphragm would pose pressure on our lungs, and then the air would goes up. It would go up to a trochlea, or called larynx. It is called larynx in linguistic term. Yeah. So the muscles in the chest that we use for breathing produce flow of air. Dia tidaklah produce flow of air, tetapi it poses the pressure so that air is pushed upward. Okay, when the air is pushed upward, and then the articulators would modify the place of articulation, the manner of articulation, as well as the the lip, the vocal tract shape, and then the sound will be produced. So the muscles in the larynx produce many different modifications in the flow of air from the chest to the mouth. Maka our larynx sangat berharga in order to modify the flow of air so that we can produce sound. Now, remember just now I said in the early stage of the lecture, I said you have to unlearn your consonant and relearn your consonant. Same goes to the vowel. If you still remember when we were in secondary school, or perhaps in our primary school, when teachers asked us what are vowels, definitely we will sing the song A, E, I, O, U. Can. Sekejap, So when we are talking about vowels, we are referring to A, E, I, O, U. And then when we're talking about consonants, we are referring to all the other alphabets which are not vowels. Betul tak? Now, I want you to unlearn all that, erase that memory for a little while, and then I want you to come back here. When it comes to linguistics, we are referring to sounds. We are not referring to the alphabets. We're not referring to the letters. Dalam linguistik, we are referring to the sound. I mohon you semua abaikan the background noise. So, the consonant sound is produced with the obstruction of airflow. And it is classified according to three parameters, which are the voicing, the place of articulation, and manner of articulation. Vowels pula, the sounds are produced with free flow of air, and it is classified by answering the question, how high is your tongue? What part of the tongue involved in producing sound? And what is the position of the lips when you are producing sound? Jadi makna kata, in linguistic, we are only dealing with sounds. Okay, we are not dealing with the letters, the alphabets. We're not looking at the alphabets. We are only looking at the sound. Ini yang awak harus relearn, belajar semula. Okay, sebab I do not want you to confuse the vowels as A, E, I, O, U and consonant as the others apart from A, E, I, O, U. Tidak. In linguistic, we are dealing with the sound, not the letters. Okay. Now, the first one, we're dealing with voicing. So, voicing occurs in the larynx where the vocal folds are. When the vocal folds are held together, they start to vibrate when the air passes through them. Maka you will have a voice sound. For example, z and v. Begitu. When they are held apart, they cannot vibrate. The air will pass freely through them, and then you will have a voiceless sound. For example, s and whenever you are doing this, I hope you are putting your finger or your palm on your Adam's apple and try to feel the vibration, whether there is a vibration or whether there's no vibration. Okay, now this is the first parameter in describing consonant. The second parameter in describing consonant, we look at the place of articulation. Of course, I'm sharing with you only the overview, okay, the place of articulation. It refers to the place in which, it refers to where in the vocal tract the airflow is restricted. Whenever we are producing sound, we are dealing solely with airflow. So in order for us to look at place of articulation, we are looking at the place where airflow is restricted in order for you to produce sound. The first one is called bilabial. Bi means two, labial means lips. So bilabial is when you are producing sound by restricting airflow using your two lips. You are producing sound, but you restrict, you obstruct the airflow using your two lips, your upper lip and your lower lip. Okay, so the sounds that you produce would be b, p, and m, b, p, and m. Right. The second one is labio and dental. Labio refers to your lip. Dental refers to your teeth. So you are using your upper teeth and lower lips in order for you to produce the sound f. Everyone, do it together with me. F and v. F and v. Begitu. Yang ketiga, you're using dental, in which your tongue would be between the teeth in order for you to produce th and the. The first symbol, macam number 8 itu adalah, macam theta symbol itu adalah th, th. Yang kedua tu, the, kan. The fourth would be alveolar. In which the front part of your tongue is on the alveolar ridge. Dekat mana alveolar ridge? You tanya pula. Okay, now everyone, now put your tongue on your upper teeth and then move to the base of your teeth. Betul-betul between lelangit dengan your upper teeth. Betul-betul between lelangit dan your upper teeth. Itu adalah your alveolar ridge. Okay, the sound that is produced using alveolar obstruction would be s, z, n, t, d, l. And then alveopalatal is when the front part of the tongue on the hard palate. Kalau tadi dekat alveolar ridge, sekarang dekat hard palate. Hard palate ni memang lelangit kita. Kita panggil dia sebagai hard palate, yang bahagian keras tu. Kalau katakan lelangit kita gatal kan, kita garuk kat situ lah. Hard palate. So the sound produced would be yang S macam simbol pengamiran dalam math mode dan juga matematik tambahan tu adalah sh. Sh. Jadi Syarifatun Nazifah. That's how you spell sh. Itu simbol pengamiran tu, S besar tu. Next to it would be j. J. Sh. J. Kan untunglah orang yang namanya Shazana. Dia ada dua-dua tu. Sh and j. Yang ketiga adalah ch. Kan macam kalau saya suka marah orang. Ch. Itulah simbol dia. Ch. Dan yang keempat, alveopalatal adalah simbol yang paling penting in any language at all because it is the symbol of j. Lagi sekali, j. Contohnya, Julia. Julia. J. Simbol paling penting. Simbol yang semua tak penting. Yang penting, j. Sebab simbol itu adalah Julia. Aduh, gembiranya saya. Right, the next one would be palatal, in which the body of the tongue is against the hard palate. The body of the tongue on the hard palate. Jadi example of sound bukannya J, dekat atas tu dah ada dah J sound. Kalau simbol itu bunyi dia Y. Y. Okay, jadi kalau kita pergi ke Spain kan, nama saya dieja begitu kan, orang akan sebut nama saya sebagai Yulia. Sebab tu Indonesians, whenever I'm communicating with them, they will sebut my name as Yulia, not Julia. Sedih kan nama saya Yulia. That symbol, palatal itu, simbol huruf J itu yang awak tulis selama ini, rupa-rupanya dalam IPA, it carries the sound Y. Sedih kan? Next would be Villa. Enough playing with my name. That's not my name. Gitu kan. Villa is the back of the tongue on the velum. Awak tanya pula dah, velum tu kat mana? Sekejap kita tengok dah. So, velum you carry the sound kah, 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 kah. Cuba buat everyone. Kah, kah, risau pula saya kan sekejap. Your parents tanya, abang, kakak, kau dah kenapa gelak seorang-seorang? Kan, saya tengah belajar mak, kan. Kah, 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 kah. That's Villa sound. G, 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 g. That's Villa sound. And ng, 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 ng. That's Villa sound. Okay. K, g, ng. They are velar, in which the back of the tongue is on the velum. And also we have glottal, in which the sound is produced through open glottis. Example. Dengar tak? That is glottal sound. Okay. There are also glottal stop and flap, in which we do not widely use glottal stop and flap. Remember, not in the WhatsApp group saya ada sebut tentang glottal stop. Now, glottal stop occurs when the space between the vocal cords is closed completely. Contohnya, when you're producing the sound oh, 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 yang tengah-tengah tu, in between, when you put a stop at the vocal folds. Kalau tak nampak, kita tengok. Bottle in English pronunciation. Bukan American ya. Bottle ni adalah the Cockney language in London. The Londoners, when they say bottle, they say bottle, bottle, bottle. Dan juga the pronunciation of Batman. I understand in Malaysia we say Batman, tetapi the actual pronunciation should be Batman, 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 Batman. Ada stop di situ, tapi tak apalah, Malaysians just they pronounce as Batman kan. Suka hati lah nak, as long as it is understandable. Seterusnya adalah flap, flap, It is produced by the tongue tapping the alveolar ridge very, very briefly and very, very quickly. For example, the American pronunciation of letter R. Pay attention to the R sound, letter. And then rider, the latest sound of R, bukan the first sound of R. Rider and metal, metal, metal. Itu pun contoh flap. Because you are touching the alveolar ridge very, very briefly. The letter, rider, and metal. Seterusnya, we are going to look at manner of articulation, in which we want to know how the airflow is obstructed or how the airflow is restricted in the vocal tract. The first one, we have stops. Why is it called stops? Because there is complete blockage of air. For example, you are producing the p. Macam mana nak macam mana nak uji whether there is a stop or not. Now, saya nak everyone listen to me. Everyone, ambil your palm, ambil tapak tangan, letak in front of your mouth. Cepatlah buat. Ambil your palm, letak in front of your mouth. When you're saying the word p, follow me, everyone. Follow me. P, t, k, b, d, g. P, t, k, b, d, g. Whenever you are producing these sounds, you will feel like there is gush of air on your palm. When there is gush of air on your palm, it is called stops. Ataupun ia juga dipanggil sebagai plosive. Why is it called plosive? Because when you are producing the air, there is an explosion, some sort of explosion on your palm from the gush of air. Mengapa it is called stops? Because before you're producing this sound, there is complete blockage of air. Kemudian after you completely block the air, you produce it with an explosion. Muncullah stops ataupun plosive. And the sounds are bataka bataka. Seterusnya adalah fricatives. Fricatives is when you produce the air with a small friction. Friction. Okay, contohnya f. Small friction. You allow the airflow, tetapi ada small friction dekat situ. Ada partial blockage di situ. F, v, s, z. Okay, you allow the airflow, tetapi there is friction. Macam you lah, kongsi makanan dengan adik-beradik, tetapi masih lagi you simpan sedikit, you tak nak bagi semua, tak nak kongsi semua dengan adik-beradik kan. That is fricative. And then affricates is when firstly you have stop, kemudian you have partial blockage. Mula-mula you stop the airflow, kemudian you allow the airflow tetapi with friction. Mula-mula you stop the airflow, kemudian you allow the airflow with friction. Contoh sound would be ch and ch and j, ch and j. Ini affricates. Seterusnya adalah nasal sound in which you allow the airflow to go out using your nasal cavity. Example of sound would be and mm. You are not producing the airflow using your mouth, tetapi you are producing the airflow using your nose, menggunakan nasal cavity. Contoh sounds. Mm, mm, mm. What would happen if you have a blocked nose? Contohnya you are having a flu kan, kemudian you are having a blocked nose ataupun runny nose. You cannot produce mm, mm, sound. Sebab tu kalau kawan-kawan tanya when you're having sesama and kawan-kawan tanya, "Weh, kau okey ke?" Aku debab. You tak boleh cakap aku demam. Instead, you cakap aku debab. Debab. Sebab the air cannot escape using your nasal cavity. Nanti kalau you sesama, you buat eksperimen ni. Can you say demam? Get out. Of course you cannot because the nasal cavity is blocked. Seterusnya adalah glide. Glide. It is called glide ataupun also known as semi-vowels because it takes the shape of a vowel. Contohnya y and w. Y, w. Y ni dia macam it starts with E and then Y sound. Ear, ear. And then w ni pula it's like it carries the U followed by W sound. Kalau kita nak eja lah kan. Maka it is called glides ataupun semi-vowels. Last but not least, we have liquids or approximant in which when we want to produce this sound, kita lower both sides of our tongue. Jangan tanya saya macam mana nak tengok benda ni. Phonetician dah buat study ni. Okay, saya tak kuasa nak rentas kepala orang, nak buat keratan rentas just to see how liquids and approximant sounds are produced. Example of sounds would be L and R. L and R. Ini manner of articulation in which we are looking at how the airflow is restricted in order for us to produce sound. We have stops, or also known as plosive. We have fricative, we have affricates, we have nasal, we have glides, we have liquids or approximates. This is your table of sekejap Aizat letak atas meja. This is your table of consonant chart. Okay, so you have bilabial, labiodental, dental, alveolar, alveopalatal, palatal, velar, glottal, and then you have stop, fricatives, affricate, nasal, glide, and liquid. Tak ada formula for you to memorize these arrangements. You have to familiarize yourself. Ataupun maybe you can, ya Allah bisingnya, minta maaf. You can come up with your own mnemonics ke kan to know how to produce this sound. Alright, seterusnya we will continue with our next slide kalau boleh. Now, when we are producing vowels, I hope you can focus. Macam domestic war lah kat rumah saya ni. Okay, right. When we are producing, kejap I have to stop for a little while.